Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cha Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Diriye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, today we are starting a new chapter, chapter 17, The Descent of the River Ganges, text number 1 onwards. Translation. Shukdev Goswami said, My dear king, Lord Vishnu, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, appeared as Vamandev in the sacrificial arena of Bali Maharaj. Then he extended his left foot to the end of the universe and pierced a hole in its covering with the nail of his big toe. Through the hole, the pure water of the causal ocean entered this universe as the Ganges River. Having washed the lotus feet of the Lord, which are covered with reddish powder, the water of the Ganges acquired a very beautiful pink color. Every living being can immediately purify his mind of material contamination by touching the transcendental water of the Ganges. Yet its waters remain ever pure. Because the Ganges directly touches the lotus feet of the Lord before descending within this universe, she is known as Vishnupadi. Later, she received other names like Janvi and Bhagirathi. After 1,000 millennia, the water of the Ganges descended on Dhruvloka, the topmost planet in this universe. Therefore, all learned sages and scholars proclaim Dhruvloka to be Vishnupad, situated on the Lord Vishnu's lotus feet. In this verse, Shukdev Goswami describes the glories of the Ganges River. The water of the Ganges is called Patita Pavani, the deliverer of all sinful living beings. It's a proven fact that a person who regularly bathes in the Ganges is purified both externally and internally. Externally, his body becomes immune to all kinds of disease, and internally, he gradually develops a devotional attitude towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Throughout India, many thousands of people live on the banks of the Ganges, and by regularly bathing in her waters, they are undoubtedly being purified, both spiritually and materially. Many sages, including Shankaracharya, have composed prayers in the praise of the Ganges, and the land of India itself has become glorious because such rivers as the Ganges, Yamuna, Godavari, Kaveri, Krishna, and Narmada flow there. Anyone living on the land adjacent to these rivers is naturally advanced in spiritual consciousness. Srila Madhvacharya says, Varahe one padam tu tad anyeshu tu dakshinam padam kalpeshu bhagavan ujjahara trivikrama. Standing on his right foot and extending his left to the edge of the universe, Lord Vaman became known as Trivikram, the incarnation who performed 3 heroic deeds. So obviously, this is another pastime that Parikshit Maharaj will ask about in detail. So that will happen later on. But this is how Ganges came to the heavenly planets, or up to Dhruvloka. She still has to come down to earth, and we'll read about it, how Bhagirath, Sagar Maharaj, they all went and they brought Ganges down, and how she came to the earth, and Shivji had to carry her, had to hold her in his hair on his head, so that because the flow of Ganges was so great that if she had fallen on earth directly, earth would have gone down to Patal Loka. So another wonderful pastime will come soon, story will come soon. But here Ganges is called Patita Pavani because it's coming, right? It's the water of the causal ocean And when it falls in this universe, it washes the lotus feet of Lord Vamandev. And that's where she gets all the potency. And by regularly bathing in the waters, both internally and externally, a person gets purified. This is how powerful Ganges is. Not an, not an ordinary river, not an ordinary water. So sometimes Prabhupada used to say that people in Calcutta is on the banks of Ganges. People in Calcutta will go all the way to Haridwar to take bath in Ganges. And he would say, Ganges is right there. Why you don't take bath over there? People would say, no, Ganges has become dirty here. The water has become dirty here because of all the pollution. Pollution cannot affect the water of the Ganges. It is always pure and remains pure. Text 2. Dhruv Maharaj, the famous son of Maharaj Uttanpad, is known as the most exalted devotee of the Supreme Lord because of his firm determination in executing devotional service. Knowing that the sacred Ganges water washes the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, Dhruv Maharaj, situated on his own planet to this very day, accepts that water on his head with great devotion. Because he constantly thinks of Lord Krishna very devoutly within the core of his heart, he is overcome with ecstatic anxiety. Tears flow from his half-open eyes and eruptions appear on his entire body. When a person is firmly fixed in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is described as Veeravrata, fully determined. Such a devotee increases his ecstasy in devotional service more and more. Thus, as soon as he remembers Lord Vishnu, his eyes fill with tears. This is a symptom of a Mahabharata. Dhruv Maharaj maintained himself in that devotional ecstasy. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also gave us a practical example of transcendental ecstasy when he lived at Jagannath Puri. His pastimes are fully narrated in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Dhruv Maharaj, he is living in his own planet, Dhruv Loka, and he's living in great ecstasy, means he's at the stage of Prema Bhakti. Tears flow from his half-open eyes and eruptions appear on his entire body because he is there meditating on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Text 3. The 7 great sages, Marichi, Vasishtha, Atri, and so on, reside on planets beneath Dhruvloka. Well aware of the influence of the water of the Ganges, to this day they keep Ganges water on the tufts of hair of their heads. They have concluded that this is ultimate wealth, the perfection of all austerities, and the best means of prosecuting transcendental life. Having obtained uninterrupted devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they neglect all of the beneficial processes like religion, economic development, sense gratification, and even merging into the Supreme. Just as Gyanis think that merging into the existence of the Lord is the highest truth, these 7 exalted personalities accept devotional service as a perfection of life. So 7 great sages, because there's Sapta Rishi and they have the 7 planets, 7 stars around Dhruvloka. So they also worship Ganges and keep the water of Ganges on the tufts of their hair. But they know the influence of the water of Ganges. Transcendentalists are divided into 2 primary groups, the Nirvisheshwadis or impersonalists and the Bhaktas or devotees. The impersonalists do not accept spiritual varieties of life. They want to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord in his Brahman feature, the Brahm Jyoti. The devotees, however, desire to take part in the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord. In the upper planetary system, the topmost planet is Dhruvloka. And beneath the Dhruv Loka are the 7 planets occupied by the great sages, beginning with Marichi, Vashishta, and Atri. All these sages regard devotion service as the highest perfection of life. Therefore, they all carry the holy water of the Ganges on their heads. This verse proves that for one who has achieved the platform of pure devotion service, nothing else is important. Even so-called liberation, Kavalya. Srila Sridhar Swami states that only by achieving pure devotion service of the Lord can one give up all other engagements as insignificant. So all the 7 sages are engaged in devotion service, and for them, everything else, even liberation, is insignificant. So Prabodhananda Saraswati confirmed his statement as follows. The Kavalyam Narakayate. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has perfectly enunciated and broadcast the process of Bhakti Yoga. Consequently, for one who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the highest perfection of the Mayavadis, Kaivalya, or becoming one with the Supreme, is considered hellish, to say nothing of the Karmi's aspiration to be promoted to the heavenly planets. So for a devotee, all these things are hellish, because in all these aspirations or activities or positions, devotion service is not there. The Supreme Lord, the service is not there. Devotees consider such goals to be worthless phantasmagoria. There are also yogis who try to control their senses, but they can never succeed without coming to the stage of devotion service. The senses are compared to poisonous snakes, but the senses of a bhakta engaged in the service of the Lord are like snakes with the poisonous fangs removed. So here Prabhu says the senses of a bhakta means just a neophyte devotee. Even his senses are completely engaged in the Lord, in the service of the Lord, so his senses are under control. But even great yogis, the yogis try to suppress their senses. But even great mystics like Vishwamitra fail in the attempt. Vishwamitra was conquered by his senses when he was captivated by Menaka during his meditation. She later gave birth to Shakuntala. The wisest persons in the world, therefore, are the bhakti yogis, as Lord Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So, bhakti yogis, they are the greatest, and these 7 sages, they have understood this truth, and they are always engaged in devotion service. Text 4. After purifying the 7 planets near Dhruvloka, the pole star, the Ganges water is carried through the spaceways of the demigods in billions of celestial airplanes. Then it inundates the moon, Chandraloka, and finally reaches Lord Brahma's abode atop Mount Meru. So the Ganges water is carried through the spaceways of the demigods in billions of celestial airplanes. Wow. And recently, I think yesterday only, NASA sent a rover to Mars, and obviously they would say they didn't find anything, they didn't see anything else. And there are billions of celestial airplanes floating in the sky. We should always remember that the Ganges water comes from the causal ocean, beyond the covering of the universe. After the water of the causal ocean leaks through the hole created by Lord Vamandev, it flows down to Dhruvloka, the pole star, and then to the 7 planets beneath Dhruvloka. Then it is carried to the moon by innumerable celestial airplanes. And then it falls to the top of Mount Meru, which is known as Sumeru Parvat. In this way, the water of the Ganges finally reaches the lower planets and the peaks of the Himalayas. And from there, it flows through Haridwar and throughout the plains of India, purifying the entire land. How the Ganges water reaches the various planets from the top of the universe is explained herein. Celestial airplanes carry the water from the planets of the sages to other planets. So-called advanced scientists of the modern age are trying to go to the higher planets, but at the same time, they're experiencing a power shortage on Earth. If they were actually capable scientists, they could personally go by airplane to other planets. But this they are unable to do. Having now given up their moon excursions, they are attempting to go to other planets, but without success. So Mars, they say we landed on Mars, but they could only send one little machine to Mars, and hopefully it went to Mars first of all. And Mangal Graha, now they have to have all the ruler of the Mangal Graha, Mars planet, and the population has to be there, and everything has to be there, the cities and whatever we see on Earth's planet, everything has to be there on Mars. But obviously, they're not going to find anything. Text 5. On top of Mount Meru, the Ganges divides into 4 branches, each of which gushes in a different direction, east, west, north, and south. These branches, known by the names Sita, Alaknanda, Chakshu, and Bhadra, flow down to the ocean. Text 6. The branch of the Ganges known as Sita flows through Brahmapuri, atop Mount Meru. And from there, it runs down to the nearby peaks of Kesharachal Mountains, which stand almost as high as Mount Meru itself. These mountains are like a bunch of filaments around Mount Meru. From the Kesharachal Mountains, the Ganges falls to the peak of Gandhamadan Mountain and then flows into the land of Bhadrashva Varsha. Finally, it reaches the ocean of salt water in the west. Text 7. The branch of the Ganges known as Chakshu falls onto the summit of Malayavan mountain and from there cascades onto the land of Ketumal Varsha. The Ganges flows incessantly through Ketumal Varsha and in this way also reaches the ocean of salt water in the west. Text 8. The branch of the Ganges known as Bhadra flows from the northern side of Mount Meru. Its waters fall onto the peaks of Kumud mountain, Mount Nila, Shweta mountain, and Shringavan mountains in succession. Then it runs into the province of Kuru and after crossing through that land, flows into the saltwater ocean in the north. Text 9. Similarly, the branch of the Ganges known as Alaknanda flows from the southern side of Brahmapuri, Brahmasadan, passing over the tops of mountains in various lands. It falls down with fierce force on the peaks of the mountains, Hemakut and Himakut. After inundating the tops of those mountains, the Ganges falls down onto the tract of land known as Bharatvarsha, which he also inundates. Then the Ganges flows into the ocean of salt water in the south. Persons who come to bathe in this river are fortunate. It's not very difficult for them to achieve with every step the results of performing great sacrifices like the Rajasuya and Ashwamedh Yagyas. And it's funny, Shukdev Goswami is speaking to Parikshit Maharaj at Shukratal, which is right at the banks of Ganges. So you must be glorifying Ganges, looking at Ganges. The place where Ganges flows into the salt water of the Bay of Bengal is still known as Ganga Sagar, or the meeting place of the Ganges and the Bay of Bengal. On Makar Sankranti, in the month of January, February, thousands of people still go there to bathe, hoping to be liberated. That they can actually be liberated in this way is confirmed herein. For those who bathe in the Ganges at any time, the results of great sacrifices like the Ashwamedha and Ratsriya Yagyas are not at all difficult to achieve. Most people in India are still inclined to bathe in the Ganges, and there are many places where they can go do so. At Prayag, Allahabad, many thousands of people gather during the month of January to bathe in the confluence of the Ganges and Yamuna. Afterward, many of them go to the confluence of the Bay of Bengal and the Ganges to take bath there. Thus, it is a special facility for all the people of India that they can bathe in the water of the Ganges at so many places of pilgrimage. But unfortunately, and this is really unfortunate, at Prayag, Kumbh Mela, or Ganga Sagar, or Haridwar, Rishikesh, and so many other places, all we see mostly are the villagers who take advantage of this bathing in Ganges. The so-called city people, they think they are very educated and they don't believe in all this. People can get liberated, they can get benefits of sacrifices like Ashwamedha and Ratsriya just by bathing in the water of Ganges. This is how pure that water is. But anyway, that's why we have to preach properly. We have to give out this message properly and set an example for all the so-called educated people to also follow. And go take bath in Ganges, make best use of living in India. Text 10. Many other rivers, both big and small, flow from the top of Mount Meru. These rivers are like daughters of the mountain and they flow to the various tracts of land in hundreds of branches. Text 11. Among the 9 Varshas, the tract of land known as Bharat Varsha is understood to be the field of fruitive activities. Learned scholars and saintly persons declare the other 8 Varshas to be meant for very highly elevated pious persons. After returning from the heavenly planets, they enjoy the remaining results of their pious activities in these 8 earthly Varshas. The heavenly places of enjoyment are divided into 3 groups. The celestial heavenly planets, the heavenly places on earth, and the Bil heavenly places, which are found in the lower regions. So Bil Swarga, Bil heavenly planets as places are beneath earth, earthly planet. Just like Sutal. Sutal is where Maharaj Bali is ruling and Vamandev is guarding his door or the gate of his palace. So that is also considered a heavenly planet, but it's below earth. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Kshine Punya Marte Lokam Vishanti. When the persons living in the heavenly planets exhaust the results of their pious activities, they return to this earth. In this way, they are elevated to the heavenly planets and then they again fall to the earthly planets. This process is known as Brahmanda, Brahman, wandering up and down throughout the universes. Those who are intelligent, in other words, those who have not lost their intelligence, do not involve themselves in this process of wandering up and down. They take to the devotion service of the Lord so that they can ultimately penetrate the covering of this universe and enter the spiritual kingdom. Then they are situated on one of the planets known as Vaikuntha Loka, or still higher. Krishna Lok, Golok Vrindavan, A devotee is never caught in the process of being promoted to the heavenly planets and again coming down. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Ei rupe brahmanda brahmite kono bhagyavan. Among all the living entities wandering throughout the universe, one who is most fortunate comes in contact with a representative of the Supreme Personality of God and thus gets the opportunity to execute devotional service. Those who are sincerely seeking the favor of Krishna come in contact with the Guru, a bona fide representative of Krishna. The Mayavadis indulging in mental speculation and the Karmis desiring the results of their actions cannot become gurus. A guru must be a direct representative of Krishna who distributes the instructions of Krishna without any change. Thus, only the most fortunate persons come in contact with the Guru, as confirmed in the Vedic literatures, Tadvijnanartham. One has to search out a Guru to understand the affairs of the spiritual world. Srimad Bhagavatam also stresses on this point. One who is very interested in understanding the activities in the spiritual world must search out a Guru, a bona fide representative of Krishna. From all angles of vision, therefore, the word Guru is especially meant for the bona fide representative of Krishna and no one else. Padma Purana states, A Vaishnav Guru Nasasyat. One who is not a Vaishnav or who is not a representative of Krishna cannot be a Guru. So Prabhupada speaks so elaborately about the position of a Guru, and without the mercy of Guru, one doesn't get the mercy of Krishna, and with those mercy, one gets the Bhakti Lata beach. So a devotee is not worried about doing all these pious activities to go up to the heavenly planets and then again lose those pious activities, come down and again go up, again come down, or go below and come back up. It's just too much wastage of time. Of the three divisions of heavenly planets, Svargaloka, Bhauma Svarga is sometimes accepted as a tract of land in Bharatvarsha known as Kashmir. In this region, there are certainly good facilities for material sense enjoyment, but this is not the business of pure transcendentalists. So Kashmir, Prabhupada says, is Bhauma Svarga. But, well, right now they have made it hell. Rupa Goswami describes the engagement of pure transcendentalists as follows. Anya Bhilashita Shunyam. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities of philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. Those who fully engage in devotional service to Krishna just to please him are not interested in the three divisions of heavenly places, namely Divya Svarga, Bhauma Svarga, and Bil Svarga. So they are not interested in all this. They are only interested in Vrindavan. That's the best place to be at. Forget about all these so-called Svargas. The devotees say, what are we going to do with all this Svarga if Krishna is not there, Radharani is not there, service is not there? Text 12. In these 8 verses, 8 varshas or tracts of land, human beings live 10,000 years according to earthly calculations. All the inhabitants are almost like demigods. They have the bodily strength of 10,000 elephants. Indeed, their bodies are as sturdy as thunderbolts. The youthful duration of their lives is very pleasing, and both men and women enjoy sexual union with great pleasure for a long time. After years of sensual pleasure, when the balance of 1 year of life remains, the wife conceives a child. Thus, a standard of pleasure for the residents of these heavenly regions is exactly like that of the human beings who lived through Treta Yuga. So in heavenly planets, They enjoy. It's just ultimate sense gratification. And the women, they don't get pregnant until the last year of their life. They don't get old like we do here. They don't get sick either. It's just the last year of the life, they conceive a child and the ladies die. So that, so that, because pregnancy is sort of hindrance in sexual pleasure, and Swargaloka means full-fledged pleasure. There are four yugas: Satya, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali Yuga. During the first yuga, Satya Yuga, people were very pious. Everyone practiced the mystic yoga system for spiritual understanding and realization of God. Because everyone was always absorbed in samadhi, no one was interested in material sense enjoyment. During Treta Yuga, people enjoyed sense pleasure without tribulations. Material miseries began in Dwapar Yuga, but they were not very stringent. Stringent material miseries really began from the advent of Kali Yuga. Another point in this verse is that in all 8 of these heavenly varshas, although men and women enjoy sex pleasure, there is no pregnancy. Pregnancy takes place only in the lower grade life. For example, animals like dogs and hawks become pregnant twice a year, and each time they beget at least half a dozen offspring. Even lower species of life, such as a snake, gives birth to hundreds of young at one time. This verse informs us that in grades of life higher than ours, pregnancy occurs once in a lifetime. People still have sex life, but there is no pregnancy. In the spiritual world, people are not very attracted to sex life due to their exalted devotional attitude. Practically speaking, there is no sex life in the spiritual world. But even if sometimes it does occur, there is no pregnancy at all. On the planet Earth, however, human beings do become pregnant, although the tendency is to avoid having children. In this sinful age of Kali, people have even taken to the process of killing the child in the womb. This is the most degraded practice. It can only perpetuate the miserable material conditions of those who perform it. So lower and lower grades of life in the different species, they have more and more children. Like Prabhupada gives the example of snake. Snake gives birth to hundreds of young ones at one time. Text 13. In each of these tracts of land, there are many gardens filled with flowers and fruits, according to the season, and they are beautifully decorated. Between the great mountains demarcating the borders of those lands lie enormous clear water filled with new grown lotus flowers. Aquatic birds such as swans, ducks, water chickens, and cranes become greatly excited by the fragrance of lotus flowers, and the charming sound of bumblebees fills the air. The inhabitants of those lands are important leaders among the demigods. Always attended by their respective servants, they enjoy life in gardens alongside the lakes. In this pleasing situation, the wives of the demigods smile playfully at their husbands and look upon them with lusty desires. All the demigods and their wives are constantly supplied with sandalwood pulp and flower garlands by their servants. In this way, all the residents of the 8 heavenly varshas enjoy attracted by the activities of the opposite sex. Here is a description of the lower heavenly planets, means the home Swarga. The inhabitants of those planets enjoy life in a pleasing atmosphere of clear lakes filled with newly grown lotus flowers and gardens filled with fruits, flowers, various kinds of birds, and humming bees. In that atmosphere, they enjoy life with their beautiful wives who are were always sexually stimulated. Nonetheless, they're all devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as will be explained in the subsequent verses. The inhabitants of this earth also desire such heavenly enjoyment, but when they somehow or other achieve imitation pleasures like sex and intoxication, they completely forget the service of the Supreme Lord. In the heavenly planets, however, although the residents enjoy superior sense gratification, they never forget their position as eternal servants of the Supreme Being. So that's a difference between people of heavenly planets, demigods, and us. Text 14. To show mercy to his devotees in each of these 9 tracts of land, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Narayan, expands himself in his quadruple principles of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Anirudh. In this way, he remains near his devotees to accept their service. In this connection, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur informs us that the demigods worship the Supreme Lord in his various deity forms. Because except in the spiritual world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be directly worshipped in person. In the material world, the Lord is always worshipped as the Archa Vigraha or deity in the temple. There is no difference between the Archa Vigraha and the original person, and therefore those who are engaged in worshipping the deity in the temple is full opulence, even on this planet, should be understood to be directly in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without a doubt. As enjoined in the Shastra, Archa Vishnu Shiladhir Gurushu Naramati. No one should treat the deity in the temple as stone or metal, nor one should think that the spiritual master is an ordinary human being. One should strictly follow this Shastric injunction to worship the deity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without offenses. The spiritual master is the direct representative of the Lord, and no one should consider him an ordinary human being. By avoiding offenses against the deity and the spiritual master, one can advance in spiritual life or Krishna consciousness. So Supreme Lord himself is present in all these 9 tracts of land, but the demigods worship that Supreme Lord in his various deity forms. In the Padma Puran, it is said that in the spiritual world, the Lord personally expands in all directions and is worshipped as Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Anirudh. The same God is represented by the deity in this material world, which is only 1/4 of his creation. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Anirudh are also present in the 4 directions of this material world. There is a Vaikuntha Loka covered with water in this material world, and on that planet is a place called Vedavati, where Vasudeva is located. Another planet known as Vishnu Loka is situated above Satyaloka, and there Sankarshan is present. Similarly, in Dwarkapuri, Pradyumna is the predominator. On the island known as Shvetadvip, there is an ocean of milk, and in the midst of that ocean is a place called Eravatipura, where Anirudh lies on Ananta. In some of the Sata Tantras, there is a description of the 9 Varshas and the predominating deity worshipped in each. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Anirudh, Narayan, Narsimha, Hayagriv, Mahavaraha, and Brahma. The Lord Brahma mentioned in this connection is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When there is no fit human being to empower as Lord Brahma, the Lord himself takes the position of Lord Brahma. That Brahma mentioned herein is Hari himself. So 9 Varshas, 9 tracts of land, and so 9 deities, major deities are there. So much of description, so much details are there. It's mind-boggling. Text 15. Shukdev Goswami said, In the tract of land known as Ilavritvarsha, the only male person is Lord Shiva, the most powerful demigod. Goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, does not like any man to enter that land. If any foolish man dares to do so, she immediately turns them into a woman. I shall explain this later in the 9th canto. Text 16. In Ilavritvarsha, Lord Shiva is always encircled by 10 billion, not million, billion with a B, maid servants of Goddess Durga who minister to him. The quadruple expansion of the Supreme Lord is composed of Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshan. Sankarshan, the fourth expansion, is certainly transcendental, but because his activities of destruction in the material world are in the mode of ignorance, he is known as Tamasi, the Lord's form in the mode of ignorance. Lord Shiva knows that Sankarshan is the original cause of his own existence, and thus he always meditates upon him in trance by chanting the following mantra. So Lord Shiva always meditates upon Sankarshan. Sometimes we see a picture of Lord Shiva engaged in meditation. This verse explains that Lord Shiva is always meditating upon Lord Sankarshan in trance. Lord Shiva is in charge of the destruction of the material world. Lord Brahma creates the material world. Lord Vishnu maintains it, and Lord Shiva destroys it. Because destruction is in the mode of ignorance, Lord Shiva and his worshipable deity, Sankarshan, are technically called Tamasi. Lord Shiva is an incarnation of Tamoguna. Since both Lord Shiva and Sankarshan are always enlightened and situated in the transcendental position, they have nothing to do with the modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. But because their activities involve them with the mode of ignorance, they are sometimes called Tamasi. So even Sankarshan takes that role because his role is for destruction. And this he takes it up as a service to Krishna, although he's expansion of Krishna. So that's why Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Ekala Ishvara Krishna Arsabhritya. And Lord Shiva, because Lord Sankarshan himself does not do destruction, Lord Shiva is given that duty. So he meditates on Sankarshan, he gets the power from Sankarshan, and then he does the destruction. And when he meditates on Sankarshan, this is the mantra he chants, Shri Bhagwan Uvacha. No. Lord Shiva is called Shri Bhagwan here. Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Sarvaguna Sankhya Nayanantaya Vyaktaya Namaiti. The most powerful Lord Shiva says, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. In your expansion as Lord Sankarshan, you are the reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Although you are unlimited, you remain unmanifest to the non-devotees. You are unlimited, but still you are not manifested to non-devotees. Bhaje bhajanyaranam pad pankajam bhagasya krishnasya paramparayanam bhakteshvalam bhavita bhut bhavanam bhavapaham tava bhav bhavam ishvaram. Oh my Lord, you are the only worshipable person, for you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all opulences. Your secure lotus feet are the only sources of protection for all your devotees, whom you satisfy by manifesting yourself in various forms. Oh my Lord, you deliver your devotees from the clutches of material existence. Non-devotees, however, remain entangled in material existence by your will. Kindly accept me as your eternal servant. Lord Shiva is praying to Sankarshan, kindly accept me as your eternal servant. Na yasya maya guna chitta vritti bher nirikshito hi anva api drishti rajyate ishe yatha no ajit manyura hansam Kastam na manne jigishurat manaha. We cannot control the force of our anger. Therefore, when we look at material things, we cannot avoid feeling attraction or repulsion from them. But the Supreme Lord is never affected in this way. Although he glances over the material world, for the process of creating, maintaining, and destroying it, he is not affected, even to the slightest degree. Therefore, who desire to conquer the forces of the senses must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Then he will be victorious. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always equipped with inconceivable potencies. Although creation takes place by his glancing over the material energy, he is not affected by the modes of material nature. Because of his eternally transcendental position, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in this material world, the modes of material nature cannot affect him. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is called transcendence. And anyone who wants to be secure from the influence of the modes of material nature must take shelter of him. And if Lord Shiva is saying like that, so he has taken shelter, so he is definitely beyond the modes of material nature. But his service is like that, and people think he is in the mode of ignorance. He's never even under the influence of mode of ignorance. असदृशो यह प्रतिभाति मायया क्षिबेव मधवास ताम्रलोचनः नागवध्वो अर्हण ईशिरे हिया यद पादयो स्पर्शन धर्षितेन्द्रियः. For persons with impure vision, the Supreme Lord's eyes appear like those of someone who indiscriminately drinks intoxicating beverages. Thus bewildered, such unintelligent persons become angry at the Supreme Lord, and due to their angry mood, the Lord himself appears angry and very fearful. However, this is an illusion. When the wives of the serpent demons were agitated by the touch of the Lord's lotus feet due to shyness, they could proceed no further in their worship of him. Yet the Lord remained unagitated by their touch, for he is equipoised in all circumstances. Therefore, who will not worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So the wives of the serpent demon, so that was when Krishna danced on the hoods of Kaliya. Anyone who remains unagitated, even in the presence of cause for agitation, is called Dhira, or equipoised. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being always in a transcendental position, is never agitated by anything. Therefore, someone who wants to become Dhira must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Dhira Satra Namuyati. A person who is equipoised in all circumstances is never bewildered. Prahlad Maharaj is a great, perfect example of a Dhira. When the fierce form of Narasimha Dev appeared in order to kill Hiranyakashipu, Prahlad was unagitated. He remained calm and quiet, whereas others, including even Lord Brahma, were frightened by the features of the Lord. So this is what Shivji is saying, though who will not worship such a Supreme Personality of God? Yamahurasya sthiti janma samyamam tribhir vihinam yam anantam rishyaha na veda siddhartham eva kvachit sthitam bhumandalam murda sahasra dhamsu. Lord Shiva continued, all the great sages accept the Lord as a source of creation, maintenance, and destruction, although he actually has nothing to do with these activities. Therefore, the Lord is called unlimited. Although the Lord in his incarnation as Shesha holds all the universes on his hoods, each universe feels no heavier than a mustard seed to him. Therefore, what person desiring perfection will not worship the Lord? The incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Shesha or Ananta, has unlimited strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. As described in this verse, Ananta's strength is so great that the innumerable universes rest on his hoods. So all these universes rest on the hoods of Ananta Shesha. And how does it feel to him? No heavier than a mustard seed. He has the bodily features of a snake with thousands of hoods. And since his strength is unlimited, all the universes resting on his hoods feel no heavier than mustard seeds. We can just imagine how insignificant a mustard seed is on the hood of a serpent. In this connection, the reader is referred to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. There it is stated, Lord Vishnu's incarnation as the serpentine Ananta Shesha supports all the universes on his hoods. By our calculation, a universe may be very, very heavy, but because the Lord is Ananta, unlimited, he feels a weight to be no heavier than a mustard seed. In this universe, we are studying so variety, so many things inside the universe, and just sitting on the head, on the hood of Ananta Shesha, and it's no big deal. No, it's not at all heavy for him. Next 22, 23. From that Supreme Personality of Godhead appears Lord Brahma, whose body is made from the total material energy. The reservoir of intelligence predominated by the passionate mode of material nature. From Lord Brahma, I myself am born as a representation of false ego known as Rudra. By my own power, I create all the other demigods, the five elements and the senses. Therefore, I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than any of us, under whose control are situated all the demigods, material elements, and senses. And even Lord Brahma and myself, like birds bound by a rope, only by the Lord's grace can we create, maintain, and annihilate the material world. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Being. A summary of creation is given in this verse. From Sankarshan, Mahavishnu expands. From Mahavishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu expands. Lord Brahma, who was born of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, fathers Lord Shiva, from whom all other demigods gradually evolve. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu are incarnations of different material qualities. So passion, ignorance, and goodness. Lord Vishnu is actually above all material qualities, but he accepts control of Sattva Guna to maintain the universe. Lord Brahma is born from the Mahat Tattva. Brahma creates the entire universe. Lord Vishnu maintains it, and Lord Shiva annihilates it. The Supreme Personality of Godhead controls all the most important demigods, especially Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, exactly as the owner of a bird controls it by binding it with a rope. Sometimes vultures are controlled in this way. Prabhupada explains. So Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, they're not independent. They're not same as Lord Vishnu, and they're not independent of him either. Yannirmitam karyapi karma parvani mayam janoyam gunasarkam naved nistaranayo yoga manjasa tasmai namaste vilyodayatmane. The illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead binds all of us conditioned souls to this material world. Therefore, without being favored by him, persons like us cannot understand how to get out of that illusory energy. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who is the cause of creation and annihilation. So this is the position of Lord Shiva. He himself is praying to Krishna and saying, we cannot understand how to get out of that illusory energy. He's calling himself as a conditioned soul. And somehow, followers of Lord Shiva, they always fight with Vaishnavas about who is supreme. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, this divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. All conditioned souls working within the illusory energy of the Lord consider the body to be the self, and thus they continuously wander throughout the universe. taking birth in different species of life and creating more and more problems. Sometimes they become disgusted with the problems and seek out a process by which they can get out of this entanglement. Unfortunately, such so-called research workers are unaware of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His illusory energy, and thus all of them work only in darkness, never finding a way out. So-called scientists and advanced research scholars are ludicrously trying to create the cause of life or trying to find the cause of life. They take no notice to the fact that life is already being produced. What will be the credit if they find out the chemical composition of life? All the chemicals are nothing but different transformations of the five elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the living entity is never created. Na jayate mriyate va kadacha. There are five gross material elements and three minor material elements: mind, intelligence, ego. And there are eternal living entities. The living entity desires a certain type of body, and by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that body is created from material nature, which is nothing but a kind of machine handled by the Supreme Lord. The Lord gives the living entity a particular type of mechanical body, and the living entity must work with it according to the law of fruitive activities. Fruitive activities are described in this verse: karma, pamanim, maya. The living entity is seated on a machine, the body, and according to the order of the Supreme Lord, he operates the machine. This is a secret of transmigration of the soul from one body to another. So all this is nicely explained here. And Prabhupada ends the purport with, after many, many births and deaths, he whose actually knowledge surrenders to knowing me to the cause of all causes and all that is such a great soul is very rare. So this is the only way to get out of the Maya, material energy of the Lord, illusory energy of the Lord. And Lord Shiva himself is accepting that. Actually, I wanted to come to this point because there ends the 17th chapter. So today we covered the whole chapter. Tomorrow we will start the new chapter, 18. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have a question on the story of King Bhagirathi from Ikshvaku dynasty. I think he has also done austerities to bring Gangas to earth. And during that time, because the speed of Ganga while coming, Ganga said that to Bhagirathi that nobody can bear it. That's the dhara of Ganga. So somebody has to be there who can take me, and that's how Ganga said that you have to worship Lord Shiva so that he can take the entire Ganga in his jata, and then from there one spill of it will go down onto the earth. So now this story, what we have heard just now, nowhere it's mentioned about Lord Shiva in between. That he is that missed from the story?
Oh, she hasn't come to the earth yet. She hasn't come to the earth yet. It'll still take time.
Okay,
She's
so
still
it's going
flowing
to come.
on the. Yeah, the story will come. That story comes in, I think, 8th canto or 9th canto. Bali Maharaj is in 8th canto. Anshuman, yeah, that is in 9th canto.
Okay. Because Prabhuji, when you mentioned that it just distributes in 4 and then in different rivers, and it's confusing a little, all this.
Yeah, I mean, she comes on Mount Meru and then four ways she flows, but she is yet to come to earth. And when Shivji catches her in his head. Yeah, that's another beautiful story. Of course, Prabhupada did mention that she meets Bay of Bengal there, but how she comes to the Bay of Bengal, that's where the Kapil Ashram is. That will be explained later. Yes.
Okay, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, in the earlier verses of the descent of Ganga, so it was mentioned that the Ganga goes to the Dhruv Loka and then to the 7 rishis and planets and then to the Brahm Loka.
Yeah.
So Brahma Loka is not the topmost planet in the material world, and Dhruv Loka is not a material planet.
Dhruv Loka is not a material planet. It's a spiritual planet.
Okay, Dhruv Loka is a spiritual. Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. And after meeting Ganga Sahib, then she further goes down to Patal Loka from there in a hidden form. Nobody can see that. It's mentioned in the scriptures. Because she wants to purify all the inhabitants all over the universe.
So, Prabhuji, I'll read a small paragraph where it states, it is said that after Bhagirath became prince of Sagar dynasty, learning the awful end of his forefathers who were unable to attain the region of gods, he regretfully made over his kingly duties to his minister and went to practice austerities in the Himalayas. On the advice of his guru Tirthala, he did penance for 1,000 years to please Ganga, to gain the release his 60,000 great uncles from the curse of Saint Kapila. So probably Kapila ashram, if you talk about Ganga Sagar near that, I think something is relating here to this particular story. Let's see.
Actually, that story
further canto.
starts, yeah, it's in 9th canto. So King Anshuman was there, or somehow it is related, and 60,000 his brothers. They were doing the Ashwamedh Yagya. The horse was found in Kapilashram. Somebody stole it and kept in Kapilashram. So these 60,000 princes, they went there and they thought Kapil Muni had stolen that horse. And they wanted to attack him. They insulted him and wanted to attack him. Kapil Muni just opened his eyes and he burned them all to ashes. So now the problem happened. The horses were not there. What's this sound? So the princes were not there and the horse was not there. So there was a big problem. 60,000, the prince were gone. So first Sagar Maharaj came and he tried, and he was told, okay, do tapasya, get the Ganges, because he wanted to liberate his predecessors. And he was told the only way is if Ganges agree to come, Ganges touches these ashes, then they will be liberated. But Sagar Maharaj could not bring Ganges. And then Bhagirath then did his tapasya. And finally, Ganges, Mother Ganges relented. And obviously, we know Ganges when came down to Shivji's jatas, and then she flowed further. And then there's a beautiful story. When Ganges came to Navadvip, Bengal, then she came to Navadvip, and then she had known that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to appear there. So Bhagirath Maharaj was going in his horse, and Ganges was following him. And all of a sudden, and there was so much of noise of all the water that is coming. And all of a sudden, Bhagirath, he turned around because there was no noise and Ganges had stopped there. Now Bhagirath has prayed to her, what happened now? We were going. She said, no, here Gaurang Mahaprabhu is going to appear. I'm not going any further. He prayed to her, please come. And then she said, okay, let Gaurang Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appear first. Let him play in my waters and then I'll go further. So Mahaprabhu appeared. Mahaprabhu prayed in her waters and then she went further. And then again, when we went to Navadvip Mayapur, we went to that ashram, Janu Muni's ashram. So she was going further and she was happy that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has played in my waters, and she was jumping up and down through that ashram. And the ashram was flooded. Janu Muni was doing his tapasya and he drank whole Ganges. Again, Bhagirath Maharaj looked back. He said, where did Ganges go now? What happened? And he saw Janu Muni sitting there, and then he prayed to Janu Muni, please let her go. I have to liberate my predecessors. Then obviously different kalpas happen differently. So one place it is said, then Janu Muni let her out of his ear. And another place it says he let her out of his thigh. So anyway, so that's why Ganges is named Jahnavi, daughter of Janu Muni. And then she went further to this Kapil Muni ashram, and then she goes into ocean, Ganga Sagar.
Wow, that's a great story, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful pastimes of Ganges are there. Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji,
Thank you.
for telling the story. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Jai Srila Prabhupada.